Right. Now, here's the thing. The PowerPoints that we've been showing while you've been talking, these are from the PRISM PowerPoints. Quite extraordinary they put them into PowerPoint form, really, when you think about it, but they did. What do they tell us, these PowerPoints? Because the key thing to me is the suggestion from them that they have worked hand in hand with these internet companies, but many of these companies have come out strongly tonight saying, absolutely, we did not work hand in hand with them.
Well, there are a couple things to know about that. One is that it's very clear from the fine print of the document, and not just the fine print. I mean, there's something in the speaker's notes, but also in the slides themselves. The government is clear that the most sensitive secret in this top secret /SI/ORCON/no foreign document is the identity of the companies. They know that it puts the companies in an awkward position, that it could have regulatory, legal, market, reputational consequences for the companies, and they really don't want the companies to stop cooperating. I'm not shocked that the companies are denying it. I don't assume that.
Do you believe them?
There may be some technical basis on which they can say that we are not actively collaborating, or that they don't have what we consider in our own definition to be direct access to our servers. But what I do know is that I've talked to more than one person who has sat at a desk at a web portal and typed out commands and reached into those servers from a distance. So whatever they want to call that, that's what's happening.
What I would call it is the single biggest infringement on American civil liberties probably of all time, isn't it?
Well, it depends entirely how they're using it, and that's the problem with the secrecy here. You have the administration saying, Congress passed this. Two presidents of two different parties think it's a great idea. The FISA judges all think it's a great idea, and the problem is that the public never got even a peek at what is happening. The actual law that was passed in 2008 and repassed in 2012 says nothing about what they can do with this power. They have a secret, highly classified legal interpretation of their own powers, which they then bring to a secret court, which hears only from them, and says, yeah, that's okay with us, you can do that with your powers, and then they do it. And the companies are not allowed to say what they're doing either. So the public, which is in fact paying some price or other in terms of privacy, and we don't know how much, never gets to say, that's not quite how I would draw the boundary between security and liberty here.
Barton Gelman, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you.
And now I want to bring in a man who's been against the Patriot Act from the very beginning. Senator Bernie Sanders says the government has far too much power to spy on Americans. Senator, this is just unbelievable, isn't it?
It is. I voted against the Patriot Act time and time again because I worried about giving the government incredible powers. And I'm afraid that all of the fears that I have turned out to be justified. Look, the bottom line is that the United States government now has phone records and other records of tens and tens and tens of millions of Americans who have nothing, absolutely nothing to do with terrorism. I happen to believe terrorism is a serious issue. I want our law enforcement people to be vigorous and aggressive in going after terrorists, but we can do that without undermining the basic constitutional rights that have made this a great and free country. So I hope that we revisit this issue of the USA Patriot Act and that we constrain what the government can do. So I want kids out there, and I want every American to know, that when you get on the telephone, the government is not going to have records of who you were talking to and what time you were talking. I don't want that kind of feeling to inculcate Americans that Big Brother is watching me.
Right, it's not just phone calls, though. It's emails, photos, video, audio, documents, connection logs, everything. I mean, what has been going on here in the name of terrorism investigation is so all-encompassing. It almost embraces every single aspect of every American's life online.
Bottom line is, if we believe in freedom, if we believe that you and I have the right to live our lives without the government knowing what we are doing, then we have got to have a serious debate on this issue, and in fact, we've got to change the law.
How can you believe in freedom, do you think? I mean, try and play devil's advocate for me. How can you believe in freedom and boast about, fighting for freedom when you have secret courts, secret operations like PRISM, secret investigations which go into every spit and cough of every American's lives without any member of the American public knowing about it? That's not freedom, is it?
No, not to my mind, it's not, and that's why I voted against the Patriot Act. I think what the American people have got to rise up and say, look, yes, we want protection from terrorism. I happen to believe that's a serious issue. There are people who want to do us harm. But I am absolutely convinced that we can do it in a way without accumulating the records of tens and tens and tens of millions of innocent Americans. And that's what we have got to do.
Senator, you're an independent. The New York Times editorial board said tonight the administration has now lost all credibility. Has what Barack Obama has been doing and his administration, not just with all these revelations in the last 24 hours, but also the IRS and going after AP and Fox News and so on, when you put it all together, is what he's doing worse than anything George W. Bush did?
Well, I think Bush started the process. And what I had hoped, and I think millions of Americans had hoped, that Barack Obama, who knew something about constitutional law, would not only change Bush's policies in a number of ways, but certainly with regard to civil liberties. And I think it's fair to say that many of us are deeply disappointed that he did not end many of those programs and provide a lot more transparency than he has.
No, and you could argue he's right to say he'd be different. He's worse. Anyway, Senator, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you.
When we come back...